I had a whole falling out with a player who constantly got mad at the challenge rating of encounters and got mad at me for undermining the frontliners as a whisper bard with a melee build and wasting my inspiration to use psychic blades instead of buffing the frontliners. The player eventually got kicked for not paying attention and general bad behavior / attitude, so his lack of ability / interest in adjusting was certainly not isolated. Anyway, he was really into Final Fantasy XIV. I'd never played it, nor had interest in it, but later, I started playing a bit and realized how the class and raid system worked. I didn't super enjoy it, and I stopped. Months later, I realized this guy was mad at me for being a support class trying to DPS. Very silly. Anyway, the game after he left was pretty fun, and we mostly handled the encounters the DM threw at us with a few issues, because the DM had never made us run down every single enemy or punished us for not having the right ratio of support, DPS, and tank. I mean, I never thought I'd see a guy justifying his quote-unquote optimization arguments with an MMORPG completely separate from Dungeons & Dragons, but, well, here we are. Okay, so this is an old story, so I only really remember the parts that affected me personally because I've been so mad about it for a solid decade and change, and I don't think I'm gonna stop being mad about it anytime soon. So, back in the olden days of 3.5, well, it was technically 4th edition, but we weren't monsters. Me and my group of my IRL friends wanted to get into Dungeons & Dragons and decide to be a group together because we were all teenage girls at the time and were afraid of running afoul of the kind of weird dudes you sometimes find in the TTRPG scene. Gestures broadly at this whole subreddit. And besides, one of our 2 group members who actually had any player experience wanted to try her hand at DMing. I'm gonna call her Kylie. First warning sign, when we were trying to come up with characters, she insisted that the problem with RPGs was that the characters were all too powerful and too perfect. So she decided she wasn't going to be accepting characters unless they had some big flaw. Okay, that could be fun. We had a war veteran with PTSD, a narcoleptic monk with a substance abuse problem, again we were teens, a ranger, a barbarian whose flaws I don't remember, and my girl, Beth, the half-orc druid with debilitating social anxiety and panic attacks. Okay, the real warning sign of this, Kylie, the DM, tried to insist that my character having anxiety wasn't good enough to be a flaw. We argued about it before she finally relented that if PTSD quote-unquote counted, Beth's flaw should too. I should have taken this as a sign, but I did not. I want to play with my friends. First session was a pretty hilarious romp. Most of the party accidentally set a large part of the town on fire. Beth took some notes on the local fish population. The party meets up and, oh no, the war vet's pet goats are missing! We had our plot hook and set off into the woods. This is where the actual horror story is. Yes, 3 pages in. I warned you I ramble a lot. We want to focus on the goats. We like the goats. Kylie did not like the goats. Apparently the goats were just to get us out of town. She actually wanted us in a haunted mansion, so we went to a haunted mansion. We're poking around looking for clues or whatever, still hoping that this will somehow link to our missing goats. I describe Beth carefully cracking a door and peeking in. Kylie, the DM, starts to describe the horror set piece inside, and I slam the door. No you don't. Excuse me? Yep, she went there, the great DM taboo. Oh wait, no you don't. You go in. It wasn't a compulsion or anything, she just made my character do something, when my character had been set up from creation as being timid and anxious. I tried to roll with it. Okay, then I leave immediately. 3 guesses, what comes next? No, you don't. The door slams shut. She makes me, and my character Beth, who has panic attacks, sit there while she plays out her whole horror set piece, some generic thing with haunted dolls, before letting me leave the room. And then Kylie, in true bad DM fashion, has the audacity to get annoyed at me for having Beth have an in-character panic attack and be unable to relate what she saw in the room. But turns out it didn't matter what Beth saw because next session Kylie had gotten bored with the haunted house she forced us into. She decides she'd rather run a sci-fi themed game. So what does she do? That's right, she had the whole party wake up and the whole fantasy setting and everyone's backstory and character identity was just a dream. There was not another session. The whole party rage quit. I'm sure Kylie loved the idea of DMing until she found out about the whole character freedom thing. I have been a big advocate for DMs being allowed and able to say no when somebody's ruining the fun for the players at the table. But what Kylie's doing here is just ruining the fun herself. She's saying no to a perfectly logical character description. Now, I do understand to a degree I like describing scary stuff, and if in the middle of a description of mine, a player went, "Oh, I don't look at that," and just interrupted me midway, it would be kind of annoying, but I established early on in my games that I'm pretty descriptive and a little theatrical, and therefore my players understand that when I'm describing something, I'm not impeding them in their ability to take actions. They just need to wait until the description, the roleplay, the scene setting is done. That's what Kylie should do, but I don't think that's what she was trying to do. It seemed like she just wanted to spontaneously create fun stories that she wanted at the moment. Hence the sudden switch from fantasy to sci-fi. Wonderful. Me, the DM. Barbarian is problem player number 1. Bard is problem player number 2. Wife to problem player number 1. Fighter is another player character. Brother to problem player number 1. Paladin is another player character, and Wizard is another player character. I will try to be brief, and I'm sorry if this is long. This is my first ever Reddit post, and I really want to explain to the best of my abilities. We are running an intermediate session where the players are level 10 and are fighting legendary monsters. I told them to optimize because survival is important. This was all agreed upon as a game we wanted to do. The day before the session starts, Barbarian asks me if his wife, Bard, can join. I say sure, I don't want to exclude anybody, but I warn that this will be a tougher campaign. He says it's not a problem, and then when the day comes, she has never played D&D before and hasn't even made her character sheet. Well, we spent the next 4 hours helping her while the Barbarian sat on his phone, looking at memes. We got 2 hours into the campaign, and she said she needed to take a nap, so we had to stop for the day. Next week rolls by, and when we pull up to where we're supposed to meet, which is the Barbarian's house, the Barbarian and Bard say they will be there shortly. After 30 minutes, they apologize they were late, but they were in the middle of Mario Party. After about an hour, the Bard pulls out her laptop to play RuneScape, full blast. I told her not to do that. The Barbarian continues to play on his phone, loses track of initiative, and a show of a lot of PDA, making the group uncomfortable. Next week, and again, they are late to their own home, and in combat, the Bard falls unconscious because she doesn't know how to play. She then cries and asks why I would do this to her. The Barbarian doesn't do anything to help his wife, but the Fighter tries to calm her down. This stopped the session for the day. Next time we play, the Wizard and Paladin are doing all the heavy lifting, and the Barbarian complains that he doesn't have any utility spells, even though he knows that Barbarians are purely martial? On top of all this, they will cancel last minute, make out in the middle of sessions, interrupt people while they RP to show memes, talk loudly amongst themselves, and complain if things aren't going their way. How do I address this? I worked really hard on this campaign. This was posted as an Am I the Asshole, and anyone with brain function will know what I'm about to say, but, you know, drum roll please. Not the asshole! Shocking, I know. This one is just a blatant horror story. Usually there's a bit of moral grayness to an Am I the Asshole post, but not here. These two just suck. Now, of course, solving this problem is a bit more complicated because you are playing in their home, but that doesn't give them a right to act like instigatory jerks. I mean, seriously, taking out your phone to play games or playing an MMO on full blast while you're trying to play D&D, if you can't tell that's rude, I don't really know what I can do for you. As a quick tip, always try to have some sort of interview if you were trying to do a long-form campaign. I cannot imagine letting someone into my D&D game that I've never met before. The second Barbarian said, "Hey, can my wife join?" I would have just met with the wife to check if she wants to join or if this is a game she's interested in. Don't think that would have solved any problems with these people, but, you know, it could help you in the future. Despite the title, this isn't a horror story, not in the same way others on the subreddit are. It's more sad than anything else. This happened a couple hours ago and I'm still feeling upset and need to shout into the void a bit, I guess. I had joined a homebrew game on Roll20 that seemed like it would be a pretty interesting fit. The DM described it as dark fantasy, sandbox world, Curse of Strahd, Hellsing adjacent in terms of atmosphere. I love dark fantasy, Hellsing, and had been looking for a Curse of Strahd game to join, so this was right up my alley. The DM invited myself and another player into a Discord call with him for our own Session 0. I wanted to emphasize that the DM is a good guy. He was clearly eager about playing the game and had a lot of ideas about this world of his. We rolled stats and I got numbers for a not quite optimal but still decent bard. He sends me a link to the College of Soul Song homebrew subclass, mentioning how the lingering spirits of this world have a lot of secrets to tell those who listen. I roll up my drow, Zarafe, and the first few sessions are genuinely fun. Our bard, paladin, and paladin get into a bit of an eating contest. And my ghost companion, the DM had me roll a d4 and gave him to me as a secret part of my Haunted One background, informs me of a shady plot NPC that sets us off on our first plot hook, an abandoned castle atop a hill town that is somehow connected to the increase of werewolf attacks in the area. We spend the next 2-3 sessions investigating the castle and find a giant spider demon sealed away in the basement. We all only managed to just avoid a TPK thanks to a special magical item that I had found in a side quest mini session I had with the DM. Go back to the tavern to lick our wounds, and the main plot hook of my character is dangling in front of me. A good start to a campaign, and I think I will be always a little upset that we didn't get much further than that. It's not my place to comment on the DM's personal life, but things really started to go south when drama with his fiancée started bleeding into our game. I only know her tangentially, but she gave off the impression that she was emotionally unstable. Why do I say this? In a call with DM and I'm 90% sure she called me a dumb demanded the DM end the call. I hadn't even said 2 words directly to her. As a matter of fact, I think all I said that night was, "Hi DM girlfriend." He was on speaker to be cordial when I heard her in the background. DM waved it off as her being jealous and emotional because of pregnancy hormones. I awkwardly laughed it off and mentioned that DM can tell his fiancé that I'm lesbian, so I have no desire whatsoever to try and steal her man. I shouldn't have needed to bring up my sexuality to justify talking to my dungeon master, but that was the type of person DM fiancé was. Another night, Dungeon Master was staying at her house, but for whatever reason, she had blown up at him, to the point where he had to leave her house and walk to his. The reason I know this is because it happened during a session, so God, the party, and everyone else overheard her complaining at him over his mic. I could go into more detail, but again, not really my place to comment, and not the reason why I'm posting this. Starting a few weeks ago, the DM is constantly late to sessions, and in the middle of the game would get up away from his laptop to go make dinner or deal with his fiancée, smoke a bowl, and essentially ghost us for 15 to 20 minutes. That wouldn't be a problem if this happened once, maybe twice within the last month, but it was every following session. 2 weeks ago, DM is 30 minutes late. He and his fiancée decide to go to Taco Bell. DM does his best to narrate the game on the walk. The connection is bad and we can barely hear him, but it's tolerable. DM and fiancé go by her house and get involved in drama involving the dude DM's fiancé cheated on him with for about a week. Oh, and the police. The game is put on hold for about 30 minutes while they deal with the cops. Weird, but okay, whatever, fine. Neither of them could have known there would be that much trouble waiting for them at her house. We end the session learning the main plot of the campaign, meet a plot-relevant NPC, and a metric crap ton of frostworm bits the paladin is ecstatic about because we found more than enough to make a new set of armor. He also wants to use the fangs to decorate Prospective Tavern. I think he was planning on opening on the side. Anyway, last week, DM is an hour late. He had just started a new job, so yeah, whatever. At the beginning of the session, he told us that we are going to choose a leader, a name for our group, and travel to a port town for the next part of the quest. But first, the plot central NPC we rescued the last game invites us all to dinner. He was the son of the noble family who owned the castle, and probably knew about the werewolves, and could probably tell me about the fire demon trapped in a Necronomicon type magic item that I found, who apparently had a blood contract with my character's family. Before we can even get to the dinner though, DM's weed dealer comes to his place, and DM pretty much ghosts us to go smoke with his dealer for 40 minutes. He pops his head back in to voice a few lines of dialogue for the plot-relevant NPC, realizes his dealer stole his lighter, and spends another 10 to 15 minutes finding a new one. In order to clarify how bad this was, the game was supposed to start at 8 p.m. CST and end at 11 Central Standard Time. Sometimes we go until midnight, so nearly 2 hours of this 3-hour session, the party just twiddle our thumbs and voice chat. The most that was accomplished in that game was that the party got new outfits, we ate dinner, and the paladin rolled a few cigars for the cleric. that was it. Instead of any actual direction or lore, and my character had a few words to say to the NPCs, since the demon in the tome had been nothing but a nuisance and she wanted to know how to control it. She couldn't destroy the demon due to the blood contract, but it had possessed her last session and she was having none of that. Anyway, instead the party gets attacked by random assassins, I think, and my bard nearly dies due to a dagger in the chest. It's at this point where I start to get frustrated. I want to say here and now that I have absolutely no problem with anyone who smokes weed recreationally or weed in general. I can't stand the smell of it, but I'm not going to get up on a soapbox and lecture people who smoke. The problem here was that the DM was so uninvested in his own game that he decided to go off and get high with his dealer / look for a lighter for roughly a third of our playtime. However, I like to think that I'm a patient person and genuinely do like the DM. I'll see what happens next session, I thought. Then I'll decide if I want to leave. Which leads us to tonight, dear reader. The party and I are sitting in chat. The DM is late. Again. But pops in to let us know the game will start as soon as he gets home. And also that fiancé was joining the game. And so we wait, and wait, and wait. An hour passes. DM's fiancé gets her panties in a twist about something and the game is delayed. DM apologizes and says we'll start soon. And we wait, and we wait, and we wait. While we were waiting for the DM, Paladin mentions that he's probably going to leave the game because he's sick and tired of constantly waiting on DM. Paladin offers to DM Icewind Dale for us on another server, since in the time he's gotten to know us chatting, and we've had a lot of time, he likes us and the natural chemistry we all have. We all air our grievances about the situation, and unanimously agree that it just isn't fair, that we all make sure to arrive on time while the DM acts disinterested and wishy-washy. None of us have anything against DM as a person, we just feel like he's taking advantage of the good rapport we've built up with him. At the 2-hour mark, DM pokes his head back in and tells us the game will start as soon as he gets his pajamas on. We wait for 30 minutes. DM sends us all invites to the Icewind Dale server, and we all agree to leave DM's game in order to start playing Rime of the Frost Maiden. DM adds all of us back onto his server to get us into voice chat, and immediately tells us to wait again. This will be easy, the Paladin deadpans. My patience is thoroughly expended. I chime in. He tells us to come back, then tells us to hold on not even a minute later. The DM cuts me off, half jokingly I hope, saying that if anyone else talks like that, their character dies. Paladin cuts him off, saying that's not going to happen, because we're all dropping DM's campaign. We emphasize that's not anything personal. We all really like the story the DM has us play when we're able to play it. Those of us who choose to speak say our piece, and we leave the voice chat and the server. It's been a few hours and I still feel bad. I love the part of the world I got to see. I love my character. I love the antagonistic relationship she had with the demon in the tome. DM and I spent hours talking about my character's backstory and how her family tied into the lore. Maybe someday I'll bring her back as a pack to the tome bard block. It honestly would have been easier to leave if the DM had been an asshole, but he was just a troubled guy going through a rough patch who clearly needed some time to get his life in order before he tried running a long-term D&D campaign. I only wish him the best. TLDR, DM starts campaign with a promising world, but constantly shows up late to sessions and puts sessions on long pauses in order to do other things, causing his players to feel underappreciated and like our time doesn't matter. With heavy hearts, we all agree to leave the campaign. Honestly, this is a pet peeve of mine. I cannot handle distractions during a Dungeons & Dragons game, especially of the people variety. If a player joins my call and there's a person in the background, like a roommate or a friend who's over or something, going, "Whoa, man, what are you doing? Is this Dungeons & Dragons?" and they're just doing that the whole game, that's going to annoy the ever-living hell out of me. I cannot imagine playing D&D with a dungeon master who's distracted, with a fiancé yelling in the background. That would be incomprehensible to me. We talk a lot about players needing to respect the DM's time, but at the same time, the dungeon master needs to respect the time of the players. Everyone's taking time out of their day to play this game, and if the DM is just going to sit there wasting player time, then that is not good. Obviously, the DM is leading this game. They're prepping the game. But when it comes to actual gameplay, they need to make it worth their players' time. They need to make it enjoyable. And clearly, this was not enjoyable. Not for in-game reasons, but out-of-game ones. It sure is a tragedy that this campaign didn't work out, but I'm glad that the group got to stick together through all the BS. So I was DMing a game for a few people I met on a Discord server, and one of them did not like the fact that some NPCs in my game were acting a bit racist and untruthfully towards Dragonborns. There was a reason for that, and I will tell you about it. So in the world where our story took place, there was a big problem with dragon attacks. For the last 1,000 years, dragons were absent from the world. They were just a legend, a myth, and not many believed in them. Suddenly, though, a few months back, dragons appeared in great number, but they were not wise and peaceful creatures that were protecting this world, as many legends said. These dragons were bloodthirsty and angry. Many cities were burned down, people died, and basically the whole country was in chaos because of that. Some people started spreading rumors that Dragonborn are conspiring with those evil dragons, and that they want to take over the kingdom with their help. Some people pointed out that all Dragonborn have ancient dragons as ancestors, so it's obvious they are in a conspiracy with the dragons. Now, that was obviously BS. Most of the lords, important merchants, and wizards, basically all highly educated individuals, did not believe that. But most simple folk from villages, small towns, merchants, and even some city guards did believe it. And so, this started many incidents of people openly showing their distrust towards Dragonborn. One of the players, let's call him Mark, did not like this idea at all. At first, he just showed in character how his player character is openly aggressive toward every character that does not trust Dragonborn. I thought it was just a character thing, but after a few sessions, he DM'd me to tell me that he does not like where this is going, and how unfairly I am treating our cleric player. Now, I should point out, this guy wasn't playing a Dragonborn. He was playing an elf. The only person that was playing a Dragonborn was our cleric, and he was intrigued by this idea of mine to create a conflict between different races. Cedric decided that his character will try to prove that Dragonborn are not evil and will try to help everyone as much as he can. I explained to Mark that I am not trying to do anything against our cleric, and I even like the way he is dealing with it. I also told Mark that, hey, it's a fantasy world full of different species. Sometimes someone will be racist towards someone else. So that was the end of the conversation. We had a few more sessions, and Mark DM'd me again, asking if Cleric was talking to me about this racism thing. I told him no, he wasn't, and asked if Cleric was talking with him. It turned out that Mark was telling the Cleric that he should talk to me about it, especially if he feels that I am not treating his character fairly. But it looks like he decided not to. So the final session of this story came, and the party was trying to get into one of the cities. Everything went fine at first, but then city guards wanted to search Cleric's belongings as a routine control. They also were showing that they don't trust Dragonborn. After scattering all of Cleric's stuff on the ground and checking if there was no suspicious items, they told him to pack up his things and move along. They told him not to try any funny business in town, as they are watching him. And that was the moment when Mark flipped out. He left the game and we stopped the session. He then DM'd me that he had enough and won't be playing with such a toxic DM. He also said that I am being racist and I am promoting racism in D&D or something like that. Before I could say anything, he blocked me and everyone else except Cleric. He then tried to convince the Cleric to talk to me about it once again, but when the Cleric started to explain that he actually liked my idea, Mark just blocked him as well. At the end, I want to say that I am not a racist person. I do not promote racism or anything along those lines. I also have nothing against the Cleric player or Dragonborn. All of this was just part of the story that I thought could be an interesting addition, and also I had some ideas on how to use it to develop the plot of our game. TLDR, player flips out about some NPCs in the game being racist, calls me racist, and then leaves the game. Now, on a baseline, I don't think it's a problem if a player does not want to deal with themes of racism or sexism or homophobia or whatever, themes of discrimination in their leisure time. I think that's perfectly reasonable. You want to relax, you want to have fun, and while D&D can be tense, a lot of people would rather not deal with discriminatory themes because many people have to deal with discrimination in just their day-to-day lives and would rather not have it in their leisure time. However, the solution to that is to talk to the DM. If this theme is integral to their plot, then the other solution is to simply find another game. Look, if you want to play in a Dungeons & Dragons game without those themes, there are plenty of D&D games out there for you to play. Attacking the Dungeon Master does nothing and just is a dick move in general. This player was being spoiled. I'd understand getting mad at the DM if they were being actually racist. That's something that I too would get pretty upset over, because racism is, bad. But just portraying racist themes and portraying them as, a bad thing in the game is fine. It's called commentary, and mature DMs and storytellers do that all the time in all forms of media, commentating on real-life social issues. I don't know why he was white knighting the cleric, for lack of a better term, but it just was generally bad for the game, and at least the DM now has a perfectly fit group to run their D&D campaign. Good luck to them. Alright, and that's where we're going to end today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys did enjoy it, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out our Campaign Diary series where I go over my own D&D campaign, Descent into the Veil, and learn some lessons from it. And while you're there in the card, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you cannot think of a comment, leave the comment. Did he just leave? To let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.